So coming off of the previous chapter, we saw that Higuruma was able to develop domain amplification on the fly to be able to defend against Sukuna's slashes. And coming into this chapter, we're seeing that impressed Sukuna, not necessarily because of the domain amplification itself, but how Higuruma is able to apply it to the fight and his abilities. Because he's able to activate it, then essentially pause, if you will, the Executioner's Sword, then reactivate it once he stops domain amplification. Because you can't have both at the same time. Like, you can't use your curse technique while you have domain amplification active. So what Higuruma is doing is, if you're familiar with a gas range, you can turn the fire down to like a little ember, and then you could, just turn it back up to like a full-blown flame. So what he's doing is, when he activates domain amplification, he's turning the Executioner's Sword down to an ember so that it doesn't completely dissipate. So that way he can, bring it back when he's not using it, because he needs it to kill Sukuna. It's the only trump card he has here. And Sukuna likens this to when he was going against Gojo using Maharaga. It's because Sukuna had to use domain amplification in order to battle against Limitless, but he didn't want to completely invalidate Maharaga's adaptation ability because that was the crux of him defeating Gojo. So he essentially just paused it. Same thing with what Higuruma is doing with the Executioner's Sword here. And also, now that I think about it, the 10 Shadows is kind of broken with domain amplification, because you can just still have like the Shikigamis out, even if they're not necessarily using like their broken abilities. But anyway, Sukuna likens Higuruma's display of abilities here similar to a level of his own, meaning that Higuruma is on the level of Jujutsu genius that Sukuna is as well. And we're going to see that that's very likely true considering what he does later on in this chapter. But also, keep in mind, Higuruma has only been a sorcerer for like under 2 months at this point, and he's already essentially at the highest level, or the level right below the highest. Like, whatever tier is under Sukuna and Gojo, Higuruma is there. Then Sukuna just starts destroying the place, and we get into this battle sequence between Yuji, Higuruma, and Sukuna just blitzes Yuji, grabs his arm, puts his hand on the side of Yuji's abdomen, and then just dismantles or cleaves him in a net pattern, and just blows out a portion of Yuji's abdomen. Like, this is devastating. Then he just drops Yuji like a bag of trash, and he's like, take a good look in the mirror, brat. You're a bore. There isn't a single interesting bone in that body. Now, that's probably not true. There is obviously some kind of significance to Yuji. Not even just talking about the implied power-up that he has right now, which still hasn't been explained, but I'm pretty sure Kenjaku did something special to Yuji for sure. And it very likely could have something to do with developing a new kind of cursed energy. I actually talked about this in a collab that's going to be coming out in the next 2 weeks with Fake Weeb, No Operator, and Quirkless Shinobi, so look out for that. So at this point, Yuji is mortally wounded, essentially, right? He needs to either develop reverse curse technique on the fly to be able to heal from this, just like Higuruma, or he already has some kind of curse regeneration ability or something that's not necessarily reverse curse technique, or it's some kind of automatic version of it, possibly. Maybe something he developed from consuming the death wound paintings. I mean, it's not confirmed that he has, but that's the popular theory at this point, I suppose. Or somebody comes in and heals him, like Shoko comes in, because, where is she right now? Or I guess a Kotsu could if he comes back with Kenjaku's head, but it's also possible that Yuji already has reverse curse technique or something like it, because he was cut up by Sukuna, right after he took over Megumi's body, and he seemingly healed from the slashes. But Yuji doesn't heal in this chapter. Like, even going into like the ending sequence, he still has like that chunk missing from his abdomen. So it remains to be seen what's going on with him. But as we can see, he's still, obviously no match for Sukuna. Sukuna could have just easily killed him right there, but I guess he didn't, because, I don't know, maybe he wants Yuji to evolve as well. Maybe he's kind of negging Yuji, to be honest. Like treating him like crap so that he'll rise to the occasion. Because Sukuna does want a good fight here. He's kind of like a sociopathic version of Goku, I guess. And it goes into the joke of Sukuna being the true main character of Jujutsu Kaisen, which would be hilarious if he actually is. Like, this whole time we were just following Sukuna's story, and he is the one who will ultimately win at the end. I don't think that's guaranteed, but with Gege, it's a very real possibility, I suppose. But I'll go more into him wanting to foster growth in sorcerers and push them so in turn that they could push him. But he continues to fight against Higuruma here in a pretty cool sequence, and Sukuna starts throwing out some enchants, like Scale of the Dragon, Recoil, Twin Meteors, and this like buffs up his dismantle that he fires off. It like cuts the bridge in half, but it also takes off Higuruma's arm. And Sukuna's like, you know, go ahead, heal yourself, come on. And then Higuruma is not able to do anything, and then Sukuna cuts off his other hand holding the Executioner's sword. And he's like, next is your head. You'll need reverse curse technique. You know that, don't you? Come on, give it your best shot. Otherwise, it's the end of the line for you. So yeah, this goes back to what I was saying about he's trying to foster growth. Like he wants to be tested. Like that's his whole thing here. And he's just so far ahead of everyone that the only way that he can get a challenge is if he forces them to get stronger. And it goes back to the whole Goku thing because if you remember in the Cell games, Goku essentially threw Gohan to the wolves, like against Perfect Cell, so that he could foster his growth and be pushed eventually to becoming Super Saiyan 2 because Goku knew that, you know, there's no way Cell would be able to defeat that level of power. So Sukuna is, I guess, kind of doing that with Higuruma and some of the other sorcerers as well, I suppose. And I also think that this plays into Sukuna's backstory. I think that he was a product of this as well. Like I also talked about this in the collab with the other creators I was talking about, how there was probably like an original Culling Games that happened maybe 1,000 years ago or something, and Sukuna evolved in that Culling game and became what he is now. Like it's possible that maybe he forced himself into being killed so that he would come back as a cursed spirit or something, but then he stopped mid transformation and maintained his humanity or something, but had the benefits of the cursed body without being a cursed spirit, something like that, you know, because if you look at the right side of his face, it looks like a curse. Like it's unmistakably very curse-like. It even resembles like Curse Naoya's face, kind of. I think I might have to make an entire video dedicated to that subject because, you know, there's the other whole thing of like he could be two people, and I know I talked about that before, but it's also even possible at this point that he, at least in part, is Michizane Sugawara, you know, the ancestor of Gojo and Akotsu. I know, crazy stuff. But yeah, I guess I'll have to make another video about that. But before Sukuna can give the coup de grace to Higuruma here, he gets shot with a piercing blood. And we don't see who does this. It kind of happens off panel, but we see the, you know, piercing blood hit Sukuna. And Sukuna's like, this is that older brother, the Death Moon paintings. So stubborn. So I guess this is Choso doing this, or maybe it was Yuji. Like Yuji somehow developed piercing blood from maybe consuming the Death Moon paintings, or it just is Choso, because Choso was pierced through the abdomen by Sukuna in the previous chapter, and we were like, you know, there's no way that this could be the death of Choso. It's kind of anticlimactic if he dies like this. So maybe he's just out there trying to snipe Sukuna, you know, giving overhead coverage. But as this happens, Higuruma is able to develop reverse curse technique on the fly, just like what he did with domain amplification, and he just grows back his hand and grabs the Executioner's sword and is about to get a clean cut on Sukuna, but as it pierces Sukuna's hand, Sukuna had already chopped off his own hand. So that prevented him from straight up being killed by the Executioner's sword, because it only needs to cut you once. And it also needs to cut the specific target that it was intended for, like whoever got the death penalty. And I guess this goes more into the nuance of how it works. Like it doesn't just have to hit a piece of you, like it has to hit you as a whole, I guess. So it won't work on a severed limb the way that like Nobara's curse technique would work, you know, for example. Then we cut to this flashback of Higuruma talking to Kusakabe. Kusakabe says, curse is getting stronger post-mortem. I wouldn't call it impossible. And then Higuruma says, if anything, I'd say that would match our general understanding of curses more accurately. So what they're referring to here, I think, is like maybe a double entendre. You know, curses mean a lot in this series, but they could be referring to like when you curse someone verbally. You know, if you just say something to them with conviction or whatever, the Jujutsu Akashic records will affect it. And it's like a spell, I guess you could say. Almost kind of like a binding vow in a way. And it's like if you curse somebody and then you die, it'll get stronger. And I think this actually goes more into Gege being inspired by Hunter x Hunter. Because like Nen contracts and just Nen abilities and stuff like that works. They get like way more powerful if you die or something. And I guess the curse in question here is what Nanami said to Yuji. Like before Nanami was killed, he told Yuji, you've got it from here. So that was essentially Nanami cursing Yuji. Even though like he didn't want to, I guess he did. And it goes back to like the first chapter with Yuji's grandfather not wanting to curse him either on his deathbed. So Yuji's curse here is like, he's got it from here. Like, Yuji is essentially the one that has to save the day. So that is his curse, and it's gotten stronger. Even coming into like the final narration here, it says, grasping the curses entrusted to him with his own hands. But before that, Sukuna just like cuts Higuruma in half. Like, I guess he's just had enough fun with him, or he's just pushing him even further, but he cuts him in freaking half. And it looks like he's dying. And he's able to hand off the Executioner's sword to Yuji, who's coming from behind Sukuna, grabbing the Executioner's sword. And in the final panel, we see that he's about to stab him in the back with it. Also, like I said, he hasn't recovered from the slices that he took to the abdomen. And this also confirms that, like, other people can grab the Executioner's sword. You know, we were talking about that before. And yeah, of course, on paper, Yuji can kill Sukuna here with it, but it just would be too easy if it ended like that, right? So Sukuna is probably going to, I don't know, do something to get out of this, either outmaneuver him or like cut a hole in his back or something, you know, I don't know, but he'll figure out a way to get out of this because it would just be too easy if he killed him here. And it also makes me wonder if Yuji can somehow put the Executioner's sword into like a cursed tool or something, the way that we found that Nanami's ability was put into his blunt axe thing. But yeah, still a lot more to come here. Let me know what you think about the end result of this. Where do you think it's headed? And if you liked it, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day and I'll see you in the next one.